Hey, it's Elizabeth with the Weekly Tasting. Thank you so much for getting this Wines of Tuscany pack. I am so thrilled with these wines. I have to say that I love Tuscany. I lived in Florence when I was in college. I visited many times since. And it's not just for the wine, but also the culture and the food. Tuscany is one of the most amazing places on earth, I think. Of course, I'm maybe a little biased. It's also full of famed wines, and that's fantastic, but it could also be very confusing. So in this pack, I tried to put together a bunch of wines that are going to help you understand what makes Tuscan wines so tasty and so differentiated. And it was tough because when I teach classes or do events on Tuscany, it can be really hard to choose which wines to present because it's an embarrassment of riches. So here we have an excellent lineup of wines that are really going to teach you about the flavors of Tuscany. We have two famous wines. That's really what I wanted to include here. The Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, which is a Sangiovese based blend. We have a Chianti Riserva here. Two very famous areas. These are standards for top Tuscan wines from the same vintage. You're really gonna get to compare what the land does, what winemaking does, and how these are so very different. Then we have a Canaiolo Nero, which is so outstanding because this is a small blending component in both Chianti and in Vino Nobile, in many of the wines of the region, but you rarely get to taste it on its own. This is an opportunity to taste the Canaiolo, which is, by the way, a very tasty wine, but also to see what it adds to Sangiovese and how it can really add something special to the blend. It's a little spicy, it's a little herbal, a really fantastic wine. And then finally, a white, because Tuscany, although very suited to growing reds, grows some very beautiful white grapes and makes excellent white wines. Vermentino is from the coast of Tuscany. It is so beautiful. It really expresses the terroir of Tuscany, very bright and lively. After tasting these wines, you're really gonna know what Tuscany tastes like in the glass. I bet you start Googling that next big trip also. It's really gonna make you wanna travel. So let's get to tasting. The 2013 Luisi Chianti Riserva is a very classic Chianti, which is why I have included it in the pack. I really wanted to show you an example of what the land tastes like, and this is very reflective of that. Chianti is an incredibly historic region. It lies between the towns of Siena, Pisa, and Florence. There was a recipe for Chianti with Sangiovese as the base grape, making up at least 70% of the wine. Now, today, they really emphasize the flavor of the land. They use the best sites and then a combination of modern and traditional winemaking to come up with something that's very reflective of Tuscany, which is why I'm very excited to show this wine to you. The wine is kind of a burgundy color. It's a little bit lighter in color. And that is probably both from the age and from the fact that Sangiovese does not hold its color very well. It usually lightens up pretty quickly. Let's give it a swirl around the glass and a snip. Such a classic Chianti aroma. The first thing that comes through is earth. That's very typical in Chianti. Then we've got baking spices and black pepper, cinnamon, that's what I mean by baking spices. Orange peel, pencil lead, that's all kind of in there. I don't smell a whole lot of fruit. Again, typical of Chianti. Let's take a sip. So it's like cinnamon and black pepper. Here the fruit comes in black and red cherry, that dusty earth component. It's got great acidity. It's got tannin that builds and builds with each sip. This is not really a sipper. You want to be enjoying this with food. It's got more weight. It's got that tannin. So hearty bean stews and lentils, ribeye steak, or any sort of meat or mushroom dish, baked ziti, eggplant parmesan, pasta bolognese. This is a phenomenal wine, a really great example to show you what Chianti is. The 2015 San Gregorio Canaiolo is such a gem. Canaiolo is a red grape that's often used in a blend with Chianti or Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, which we have on the table and we will be talking about. But this is a really unique chance to try the grape on its own. It is a very unique Tuscan gem. Before Sangiovese rose to prominence in Chianti, it was actually the main grape used. Now it's just a small part of the mix. Usually about 10% of Canaiolo Nero is used in wines from Montepulciano or Chianti. It's a complement to Sangiovese's acidity, to its bright fruit notes, to its tannin. Canaiolo is more medium in body. Let's get to tasting it, then we can see what that means. This wine is a kind of a rose color with a light brown rim. So it obviously is not a real, very pigmented wine. We're gonna give it a swirl and a sniff. Let it sit in your glass for a while so that you can get some of these aromas that I'm talking about, but you're gonna get blueberry and raspberry and licorice and this cardamom Indian spice note. Even a hint of mango chutney is in here, a little bit of that tropical plus some spice. Let's taste. So it tastes similar to the aroma. It's a little bit lighter than the aromas. The aromas are a little heavier, but still all of that spice is here. You will see that show up in Chianti, and that's why this is such a great example. You'll be able to say, wow, that's really the Canaiolo at work here. Medium body, medium tannin, great acidity, great weight in your mouth, a really nice fresh finish. It's a great sipper, outstanding with food. Hard cheeses like Parmesan, dried cured meats, pastas and tomato sauces, minestrone, all of that kind of Tuscan fare is gonna go very well with this, a little bit on the lighter side. Fantastic opportunity to taste a little piece of the blend. They should make more of this on its own, it's really tasty. The Castellani Vino Nobile di Montepulciano Vintage 2013 is an awesome opportunity for you to learn about one of the greatest wines of Tuscany. Along with Chianti and Brunello di Montalcino, this is one of the three really famous areas that make Sangiovese-based wines. This is a historic area. They've been making wines here for centuries, and it's southeast of the beautiful Tuscan town of Siena. So it's often overshadowed by Brunello and Chianti, but Vino Nobile makes amazing wines. As a result of it being overshadowed though, it's often really great value and it way over delivers for the price. Let's take a look at this wine. It's kind of a rose brownish color. It's 2013, similar to the Chianti. We'll give it a swirl and a sniff. So it's a rose color and it sort of smells like roses too, and dark flowers. It has this exotic, almost patchouli-like note or dark herbs to it. It's pretty powerful in aroma. Let's taste. Powerful dark fruit flavors. But there's also this lovely perfumed note. There's a lot of low notes. It's kind of grounded. It feels a little earthy. The wine's had a little bit of age, so with that, we see that the tannin has kind of smoothed out a little bit, still retained great acidity. It's really made to go with food like the Chianti, so you should plan to cook up a big Italian meal or order one in if you have this wine. But it's a wine with lovely balance, but at the same time it has a lot of, kind of gravitas to it. You can have it with Parmesan and hard cheeses and steak, mushroom-based pastas, things with tomato sauce also will go well with this wine, but it's very earthy and it is an excellent example of what Vino Nobile di Montepulciano can offer you, which is awesome wine. This one is the Elianto Vermentino di Toscana 2016. Now, there are two whites for which Tuscany is known. Vernaccia, which grows kind of in the interior of the country around the small medieval town of San Gimignano, and then there's Vermentino, which is really a wine of the coast. Other than that, there really aren't too many whites because Tuscany is so good for nuanced reds. So we don't see a ton of whites. You gotta be really good to stand out here as a white, and this Vermentino fits the bill. It's really a grape of the coast. We find this growing in a lot of islands, Corsica, Sardinia, and then on the coast around Tuscany, and then Liguria, which is a little bit farther north. Vermentino is either snappy and light, kind of a la Sauvignon Blanc, but maybe with a little bit less fruit, a little more herbal quality. Or it can be rich and oily and full and nutty. So this style actually kind of lies somewhere in between. I've included it to show you that Tuscany is a lot more than just reds. Let's give this a look, and what we see is that the wine is kind of a dark brassy color. I'm wondering if there may have been some skin contact in the winemaking here to give it that nice brassy color. So we'll give it a swirl and a sniff. So fresh, like fresh grass, fresh herbs, hay. It's got a nice pear aroma to it, a little bit of lime also, and we'll taste it. Very similar to the aroma, but you're also gonna get here fresh herbs, really fresh herbs, hay, and then there's a lot more lemon and lime on the palate. This reminds me of a lime that's been soaked in a margarita. It's got this kind of a little bit of a boozy note. This is a low alcohol wine, but it's got this boozy lime note going back and forth. It's really tasty. And the texture, it's a little bit bitter, tiny bit mouth drying. That's very typical of Italian whites. Great acidity, very well balanced wine. This is going to go so well with anything that you toss in an herb rub. So grilled fish, grilled chicken, grilled vegetables in herbs, rosemary, tarragon, thyme, those kinds of things are gonna go so well with this wine. Also soft cheeses, goat cheese, ricotta, mozzarella. All in all, it's a refreshing, lovely wine. It's gonna show you a different side of Tuscany that I think you'll really enjoy. Those are our wines of Tuscany. There's so much more to explore. I hope this really motivated you to learn more about Tuscany, that it got you excited about these wines, that you'll give us feedback on them, and that you'll check back on Mondays for the next available pack.